So my name is Tanya Hubbard. I'm British. And what I'm going to share with you this evening is the fruit of many years of exploring human relationships and emotions and relationship dynamics and how conflict happens and how we can overcome it. I'm going to focus specifically on nonviolent communication as a tool for helping us to do that, for helping us to get over the obstacles between us and to build strong relationships in humanitarian settings. My journey started in, my journey in peace building started in London, where I was trained in this approach to using nonviolent communication with participative theatre-based tools to create spaces where people could explore and express themselves in ways that were different. Because sometimes when we just sit and we look at each other, we don't feel very free and it's not very easy to express. Whereas sometimes when we move, when we play, when we use art, we use our bodies, different things can come out and different possibilities can emerge. I've been doing this work since about 2007, first in London, and then I had the great privilege to do this work in Myanmar since 2013. In Myanmar, I work with incredible colleagues. Sorry, my PowerPoint is jumping around. I work with incredible colleagues as part of the Myanmar Art Social Project. And that was founded in 2012 and has been a mixture of foreigners and Myanmar practitioners of lots of different kinds of tools. Peace builders, psychologists, art therapists, physical theatre practitioner, participatory theatre practitioner. And I'm telling you this because this is where I'm going to draw what I share with you this evening. From this 9 years of working in Myanmar, working with civil society organizations, local NGOs and INGOs across the different areas of Myanmar. We've worked probably with most of the INGOs that are present in Myanmar, and we've done that as consultants, responding to different needs within very wide range of teams: child protection, education, WASH, camp management committees, many of the different teams that operate in a humanitarian context. We have worked with them to explore many different issues. And this is what I'm going to share with you this evening. Our approach is one that is based in creativity, the power of the creative tools that we use: theatre, drawing, painting, dancing, poetry, and the power of empathy. And when I say empathy, I really mean using nonviolent communication to create spaces in which emotions can be expressed and understood. And we use an approach that's very much about seeing a human being as the body, the physical lived reality, the heart, the emotions, the dreams, the longings, the pain, and the mind, the stories, the analysis. And so we try to use tools that make space for all of these different parts of being human. And in this work that we're doing in Myanmar, and what I'm going to share with you today, I think it's really important to say that the ideas of nonviolent communication, they come from America. They come from American concepts of the self, American concepts of emotion, of conflict resolution. And my academic training is as an anthropologist. And so I'm very aware that when we go to another culture, it might not be the same. Ideas of self, experiences and ideas about emotion, ideas about conflict transformation, they won't necessarily be the same. So in the work that we do in Myanmar and in what I'm going to share with you this evening, I offer it as a possibility. But for me, it's always an exploration. Is this useful here? Does this make sense here? How? And if not, is there a way that I can adapt it so that it does make sense, so that it is nourishing and useful? And so in my partnership with my Myanmar colleagues, we're always blending the ideas that we're bringing with local Myanmar concepts and resources. So here on this image, for example, you see the image, I hope, of a doll that's falling. And this is a very normal toy for a child in Myanmar. It's made out of paper. And when you knock it, it wobbles and it falls over, but it always stands up again. And so we use this as a metaphor for resilience, for emotional resilience, for psychological resilience in difficult circumstances. And we use this as a tool to explore with local staff what resilience means for them. So yeah, I just really wanted to say that these ideas do come from a specific culture and place. And when we use them, when you use them in another place, it's just to explore, does it make sense here? Is it useful? And just to give you a sense of where I'm going to draw these ideas from, the kind of work that I've been doing and that I continue to do with my Myanmar colleagues is holding spaces and making processes where groups can receive psychosocial support after a difficult event. For example, we worked for several months in the area of Myanmar where there was a genocide in 2017, working with staff who had been living through that process. We worked to transform conflict between teams and within teams. And we worked to support organizational change. And you'll see throughout this presentation photos with artistic creations. And they're all things that have been created by people who are in our workshops. And I find them really beautiful. I hope you did too. And the other part of the work that we're doing is about capacity building training. So we're working to capacity build mostly local Myanmar staff. And we're working often with field-based staff who for many different reasons might not have had access to education and might not be literate. So the majority of the tools that we're using are about art, participatory, physical theatre, tools that are accessible to everyone, no matter their level of literacy. So we're sharing these tools in relation to compassion, in relation to facilitation skills, in relation to dialogue skills, in relation to psychosocial support skills and conflict transformation, and training trainers. So in what I'm going to share with you this evening, I'm drawing from 9 years of holding these kinds of spaces and asking people again and again and again, what kinds of conflicts are you facing in your daily life? What are the challenges? What are your feelings? And how do we overcome that? So I'd love to hear from you. What do you think blocks communication, collaboration, and joyful work between people and between teams in the humanitarian and development sectors? And if you just want to write it in the chat, I'll read it out, but I won't read who it's from because it might not necessarily be something that you want everyone to know. But I welcome you to share your ideas. What do you think blocks communication and joyful work?
Can I?
Yeah, please.
I think different perception of what something is. I think that, for instance, what's a good work culture, or what is a good cultural sensitive process. I mean, when we differ, we don't agree on something. I think that's the base where misunderstanding can start and conflict also.
Great, thank you. So different different ideas and different experiences of something. Great. And then I'm reading in the chat, lack of trust, poor mental health, lack of knowledge of the other, the organizational culture somehow, different assumptions, fear and anger, how authority is expressed. Wow, super interesting. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing those ideas. Yeah, really interesting. Trust, mental health, lack of knowledge of the other, the culture, assumptions, fear and anger, how power is expressed, how authority is expressed. And the ego and the result of the oriented mind. I know better. Yes, I like that one. So often. Yeah, really interesting. So there were lots of different ways that I could approach the presentation this evening, because nonviolent communication is something that is very big. And I decided to take one thing that relates, I think, to what many of you have expressed. And that is judgments and blame. People often say, why is it non-violent communication? I don't communicate violently. And one of the beauties of this philosophy or this way of understanding human communication is to notice what maybe just seems normal to us. Because from such a young age, we have been taught that to think in judgments is normal. Good, bad, clever, stupid, beautiful, ugly, right, wrong, binaries, right? And we've been taught to do that to ourselves too, and to do it in relation to others. And one of the reasons that it's called the idea of non-violent communication is to step out of this way of thinking that judges the other. And I've put two things here: judgments, which in a situation of conflict are usually negative. So judgments meaning interpretations, evaluations, making a story about something and giving it a name. And also blame. It's your fault. You did it, or you didn't do it. You made me. Blame. And so I'm going to give you examples of what I mean. And like I said, these are things that I've heard people say in many, many workshops. So one of the ways that we can judge and blame is towards ourselves. We can say to ourselves, I am bad at my job, or I am a bad manager. And in that way, we do ourselves violence. When I think I am bad at my job, I have all kinds of uncomfortable feelings that come up. I feel shame, I feel shy, I feel uncomfortable, I feel unconfident. Judgments and blame happen a lot between individuals within teams. That lady there, she's impossible to work with. She's always so rude. Notice that these judgments, they're very fixed. She is impossible. There's no space in this statement for change. She is impossible. She is always so rude. It makes this lady into just the judgment, just the name, rude, impossible to work with. It takes away the humanity of the person. He is so selfish and unkind. It's very difficult to work with someone who we think is selfish and unkind, right? If I come to meet you and I'm thinking to myself, oh, she's so rude, she's impossible to work with, it makes it very difficult to have a real conversation with you. I'm blocked by these judgments. I'm blocked from really communicating and seeing you. Judgments and blame between teams and departments. So often between the programs team and the logistics team, between the programs team and the finance team, between so many different parts of an INGO. For example, the nutrition team are so badly organized, it's impossible to cooperate with them. They're always saying that they need a car at the last minute. They're so disorganized, they're so chaotic. Finance always so strict and rude to us. How can we communicate with them? So again, fixed, static, the complex experience of the other person or the other team is lost in this story. They become like cartoons, no? Like caricatures, like really simple things, bad, strict, disorganized. And also between regions, between the country office and the field offices, between the country office and the regional office or the headquarters, between roles and levels of power within the hierarchy. There are lots of judgments. Like something I heard many times in the field in Myanmar was, the SMT just stay in the country office. They don't care at all about what happens to us in the field. They never come. And from the head office, the country office, the field offices are so uncommunicative. I have to demand to get any information from them. Otherwise, it's just silence. So the judgments here are, they don't care at all about us. They are uncommunicative. And between expats, between expats and local staff, also, as people have said, there are so many different things happening here, so many different factors at play, different cultural norms, different ways of communicating. And this way of, this non-violent communication way of understanding it is just one part. And so, for example, here, the expats never listened to us. They just get paid their huge salaries and stay safe in the country office. And each of these, you'll notice that each of these statements contains some kind of truth. And that's what we'll go on to explore later. But when it becomes definite and fixed, that's when it becomes violent, because then I can't see you. If you are just the judgment, I can't see you, I can't talk to you, I can't communicate with you. It's very difficult to collaborate. It's especially difficult to collaborate if we're in a situation of danger or stress, where everything feels a lot stronger. So judgment, what does it do? It dehumanizes the other. It disconnects us from each other. And when we blame each other, it's your fault. You made me. I had to. The problem is always the other, unless it's with me. And then I'm blaming myself and I'm bashing myself. And sometimes we do both, right? I'm awful and you're awful. Inside and outside blaming, both are violent. Blaming myself, I disconnect myself from me. Blaming you, I disconnect myself from you. And blame is also really disempowering, because if the problem is with you, then the power is also with you, which means that I don't have power. So it's a very disempowering narrative. It's a very disempowering way to see relationships and situations. And when we live with this kind of, these stories running constantly in our minds, he's rude, she's impossible to work with, they don't communicate with me, they won't cooperate, it's impossible. These narratives, whew, are exhausting. And the groups of staff that I've worked with have expressed just how much these challenges, internal organizational challenges and relationship challenges, bring up feelings that are very difficult to feel, especially every day. Stress, anger, despair, exhaustion, frustration. They're things that accumulate hugely in the body. When we're stressed all the time, we have anger all the time, we have despair all the time, our body holds it in different places for different people. But you know, where does it sit for you? Again, in the chat. When you feel these kinds of emotions, which part of your body speaks it? Is it your shoulders, your stomach, your back? Headache, neck in my face, breath, the quality of the breath, I imagine. My back, jaw, tension coming from the neck. Different places for different people. But experiencing that all the time is really tiring, physically, emotionally, mentally. I'm seeing one more. And stomach, neck and shoulders. Headache and old injuries. So how can NVC help us to find more ease in our relationships? On the screen here, you have a list of lots of different needs. The size and the color of the needs has no relevance. This is just randomly produced. I invite you just to have a look at those words. And I wonder which of these needs you feel is most regularly met in your work life. Again, if you would pop it in the chat. Which of these needs do you mostly have in your work life? Clarity, empathy, community, compassion, challenge, integrity, consistency, understanding, effectiveness, balance, effectiveness, super, cooperation, partnership. Great. And is there a need that you think, that you feel when you look at this list is mostly not met in your work life? Or is often not met? Stability, equality, empathy, equality, appreciation, clarity, authenticity, peace, inclusion, honesty, spiritual. Okay, thank you so much for sharing. So this concept of needs is something that's very familiar in the humanitarian and development sectors. We're often talking about basic needs. But we're often talking about basic needs, meaning food, water, shelter. And these needs are social and emotional needs. And in nonviolent communication, there aren't different levels like in Maslow's pyramid. It's just all of them are kind of equal, and we might have different strengths of need for them that are different between us as individuals. My husband has a massive need for freedom. I have a great need for connection. It's an unfortunate pairing. So the idea being that at the basis of everything in human experience and behavior is these needs. That we all need intimacy, space, fairness, belonging, warmth, ease, rest, growth, all of these. And when they're met, when we have these things, we feel really comfortable emotions like refreshed, satisfied, open, happy, proud, thankful, joyful, exhilarated. And when our needs aren't met, we feel sad, angry, hurt, disappointed, shocked, afraid. We have really uncomfortable emotions when our needs are not met. And I really deliberately use comfortable and uncomfortable, not positive and negative, because all emotions are just a reflection of whether needs are met or not met. So they're all useful. They're a way that our deep self speaks up what we are needing, or what needs are met, are communicated through which emotions we have. So one way that nonviolent communication is very useful is to increase our awareness of what we are feeling. You see here on this page so many different feelings, right? On a daily basis, maybe we say, I'm okay, I'm fine. Both of these things don't really mean anything. Okay, fine, or I'm not good, or, you know, like actually on a daily basis, in English and in Burmese and in French, the way that we answer when people say, how are you, is usually really limited vocabulary. And so one way that nonviolent communication is useful is to expand our awareness of all of the different kinds of emotions that are possible. The whole range, from disgust and shame and sadness and bitterness to joy and jubilation and excitement. The whole range of the human experience. And noticing those emotions and giving them our attention. And maybe I could just invite you now just to take a moment, and if you want to close your eyes. If you don't, just maybe rest your eyes somewhere away from the screen, and just to notice what emotions you find in your heart, in your body at this moment. Just ask yourself, what do I feel right now? And sometimes when we ask this question, we get a really clear answer, And sometimes we don't. And that's also okay. There's nothing wrong. Maybe you might feel parts of your body that are tense or open, where there is energy or tightness. If you do, just give them your loving attention for a moment. When you're ready, slowly reopening the eyes. So there are strong links between nonviolent communication and mindfulness. Both of them invite us to be present to what is, to notice, and to try and notice without judgment. Oh, I'm feeling sad. I shouldn't feel sad. I'm feeling angry. I shouldn't feel angry. No, I feel angry. How does it feel? And which need is it related to? I feel sad. What does that sadness feel like in my body, in my heart? And which need does it relate to? Which need is not met that I feel sad? And just to take this exploration a little bit further, earlier in the presentation, I gave the example of a programs team person who said that the finance team are so rude and strict, it's impossible to communicate with them. And when I listen to that person, I might imagine that that person's need in relation to the finance officer, their need for respect had not been met. Their need for understanding had not been met. The need for collaboration had not been met. And maybe even for dignity. And you'll see here the image of a fire. This is the metaphor that we use in Myanmar because small fires made with wood or with charcoal are the things that people use to cook on every day. So it's a very familiar metaphor. So if you imagine that in a fire, the energy comes from the twigs and the wood and the charcoal at the base. That's where everything comes from in the fire. And likewise, in a human, everything comes from whether the needs are met or not met. And in this situation, when the needs for understanding, respect, collaboration, and dignity were not met for this person in their conversation with the finance officer, you can see some small flames down here at the bottom of the fire. And these are the feelings that come up: frustration, tiredness, irritation, hurt, disappointment. And after a bit of time, these small flames get bigger. They become big, flashing, burning flames. And this is the bit that's most obvious to us when we see someone. We see the behavior. We see the big, flashing, burning flames. And this person, their behavior was to shout, was to slam the door, was to scowl, to make an expression with their face, to show their anger, and to refuse to comply with the finance officer. And this behavior is all very obvious. The feelings underneath are less easy to be sure about. And right at the bottom, the part that's giving all of the energy to this process, the needs, these are even harder to see. They're right underneath everything. But they're where the energy is coming from. And this behavior right at the top, this is our attempt to meet our needs. But unfortunately, many of us have been taught strategies for meeting our needs that are not very effective. I have a need for respect and understanding, and I slam the door and I shout. is it going to help me to meet my needs? If I slam the door and shout at the finance officer, will I get understanding and respect with them? I don't think so. If I refuse to comply and just look really angry with my face, will I get collaboration with this person? I don't think so. So this process of recognizing needs and the feelings that are brought up when our needs are met or not met, and recognizing the behavior that I am then or they are doing, trying to meet my needs effectively or not effectively. How do you think that this might be useful? How could it be something that I apply to myself or for myself? And how could it be something that I use to in my relationships with others? What do you think? Again, just pop it in the chat. Any ideas, any thoughts? Listening. You mean trying to listen and to hear, to really hear when we hear the other? Is that what you mean? Active listening, yes, great, absolutely. So whenever we're engaging with each other, trying to hear below the noise at the top, trying to hear the feelings, trying to hear or even to guess which needs might not be met in this moment. Great. Any other ideas? How can I use this in relation to myself? Great. Recognizing our needs and others' needs as well. Fantastic. This model really works on two levels. It relates in relation to my relationship and my understanding of me, and my relationship and my understanding of you. Being aware of ourselves, being aware and enable us to connect with each other's humanity. Exactly. Exactly. Great. Because if someone is shouting, slamming the door and refusing to comply, if I am the finance officer, I'm going to say, wow, he is unreasonable, rude, unprofessional. I'm going to judge this person, right? And but if I'm the finance officer and I use NVC, I go, okay, wow, that was a strong reaction. What was that person feeling? What were they needing that they didn't get in that moment from me? Great. So empathy for self. How am I feeling? What am I needing? Just kind of constantly, always just being aware of that for myself. How am I right now? At the start of this presentation, I was nervous. Now I feel calmer. And I think it's because my need for connection and understanding has been met from the way that you've answered in the chat. Empathy for other. How are they feeling? What are they needing? And that might just be an internal process that I do for myself. When I'm listening, is this what I'm hearing? Is this what I understand? Afterwards, when I'm like, what was that behavior about? Okay, what were they feeling? What might they have been needing? Or it might actually be something that is more active. It might be that I come to you and I say, that was difficult, that conversation between us. How are you now? What are you feeling? What is it that you're needing that you don't have? And so these are some of the everyday ways that we can use NVC in our interactions with each other, at work, at home, And I just want to share a few more with you that we've been using over the years with field-based staff and country office staff that we've seen having a really nice impact on well-being and connection. I want to offer you the metaphor of a cobweb. That all the time, if we can, let's weave between each other. Let's weave to try and make threads of connection between different teams, different levels in an organization, different offices, different roles. And it's possible. And one of the simplest activities to try and integrate on a regular basis into a workplace is spaces where people express themselves and are heard by each other. This might just be 10 minutes at the beginning of your team meeting where everyone closes their computer, puts the computer away, puts the phone away. Otherwise we hide behind them, right? Put them away and look at each other in whatever way is culturally appropriate in the place that you are. Be with each other in that way that is culturally appropriate. In some parts of Myanmar, eye contact is not appropriate. But whatever it is, to be present with each other. And in pairs or in small groups within a team, to give people space to just say how I am, to share with each other. Am I okay? Am I having huge challenges at home? Is my mother-in-law really sick and I'm really worried about her? Am I really concerned about my child? Am I really stressed about this part of my work that is really stopping me from sleeping? To be real, to take the professional perfect mask off for a moment and say, as a human being, this is how I am. What is difficult for me at the moment in work, in life, and also what have I achieved? It's amazing when we make space for people to share what they have achieved. It's like some kind of physical, amazing thing happens when they say, I did this, I'm proud. And when someone hears them say that, someone in their team hears them and acknowledges that, it's very powerful. And this kind of idea of just regular small moments, 10 minutes, 15 minutes on a regular basis between a team or between teams that you bring together, which needs do you think that might meet? It's a funny moment. I can see you tapping, but I'm like, where are the messages? Are they coming? Are they coming? Stimulation. Yeah, I'll repeat the question. Absolutely. If we bring people together, if, for example, you're working with a team working on child protection, and you bring your team together, and they just have 10 minutes or 15 minutes at the beginning of a team meeting where they sit in pairs and they just share with each other how they are. They just share like what's difficult, what they're excited about, what their challenges are, what their achievements are. If they do this on a regular basis, which needs do you think it will meet for them? Community, closeness, connection, confidence, reciprocity, compassion, trust, communication, just presence, support, inclusion, empathy, closeness, care, yeah, intimacy, yeah, acceptance, huge. So many, right? Such a simple thing. You don't need a big budget. You don't need to go to a beach. Just 10, 15 minutes of people sitting and listening to each other and expressing on a regular basis and hearing each other as peers, as people working in the same organization, but hearing each other's humanity. All of those needs that meets. And if those needs are met by this regular listening process, what kind of feelings do you think that will bring? Let's debate that later. If intimacy, acceptance, care, closeness, empathy, inclusion, support, presence, trust, communication, compassion, if all of these needs are met, what kinds of feelings will people have? Peace, happiness, open, trust, contentedness, relaxed, inspired, invigorated, yeah, thankful. Yeah, great. So proud to be part of, calm. Yeah, creative. Great. Emotions that are spacious and full of energy. Curious, safe. Yeah. This is a powerful way to create community, to create trust, to create safety, to create mutual clarity of mutual value and mutual respect. And processes where we do this mutual recognition and appreciation. So for example, when we work with teams in an organization who are in conflict and they are refusing to work with each other, one of the most powerful ways to transform the situation is to bring them together and to ask them what they have appreciated or what they have valued from the other team. Because the teams are always interlocking, right? They're supporting each other in some way. And for someone to hear that their action, their work did something that helped their colleague, that's really important. Because otherwise they're just kind of working on a daily basis, like a machine gun, going, doing, trying. And maybe mostly only hearing, facing challenges and hearing criticism. Whereas when we actually hear from someone, when you did that, it made my day easier. Or when you did that, it made my work have more impact. Wow, again, I've seen bodies transform in this conversation, like kind of defensiveness, like bodies that are closed and defensive in this kind of conversation. Whew, they open, they go, okay, I'm safe here. I can have a communication with this person. So making spaces for people inside teams, between offices, to appreciate each other. Playful games and shared laughter. In situations that many of us are working in, we might face danger and threat and experience loss and fear. Those are very difficult things to carry in your body all the time. As we said earlier, we feel them in our breath, in our bellies, in our heads. And if we can play with each other and really laugh, I mean like the kind of wild laughing that is difficult to stop, there is something magic that happens in our bodies and our hearts. There's a spaciousness that I think is muscular, hormonal, emotional, mental, that happens. I don't know if you can connect with the recent time that you really laughed, but it's like a flood of warmth and openness. And when we do that together, When we are laughing together, not laughing at each other, when we are laughing together, that is also a really powerful way of creating trust. And it's an amazing release and relief for our bodies to play and to laugh together. So obviously the games need to be locally, culturally appropriate. It might not be the case that, that all games can be played with men and women. It might be that we need to find strategies for the games that are appropriate for us to play together. But my experience is that in every part of Myanmar, there are different games that people played when they were children. And it's amazing when we share with each other the games that we played as children, how much the inner child comes back out. The inner child is still there, still wants to play. And it's a lovely way of sharing across cultures and across regions to share the games that we played when we were children. And most adults, if they can come out of their serious professional mode, we all love to play. Yeah? And making spaces for calm. Again, like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, not much. But whatever is culturally appropriate, finding ways and tools to give yourself and your colleagues space just to calm and to stop. In Myanmar, we used mindfulness a lot. Just simple, very simple meditations, watching the breath, listening to sounds, being present. And very simple yoga stretches, just to notice the body, to notice the sensations in the body. And there's so much evidence now of how powerful these tools are for enabling our whole being, our minds, our bodies, our hearts, just to have some rest, to have some peace. So whatever is culturally appropriate for where you are, finding something that helps you and others to be calm. And using creative problem-solving tools yourself and with your team. Sometimes, I don't know if this resonates with you, but sometimes we just get stuck in front of our computer and there's a problem and it's very difficult to overcome. We, in our work, we give people paper and pens and paint, and we ask them to play with their bodies. And when we use creative techniques, when we step away from the computer, we put the notepad down and we just come into a space where instead of like with a lot of stress and focusing only on solving the problem, and we just come into a space of playfulness with a challenge. When we do this as a group, there is a great strength in that process because, again, we hear each other, we create together, we explore together. And then we own the outcome too. If we find a solution, we own it together. And then there are times when playfulness and wild laughing are not what is needed. There are times when, as a team, we might have lost a colleague, we might have lost someone that is precious, or someone in our team might have lost someone. And then the question is, how do we meet this need for mourning? How do we honor this need for recognition, for respect? How do we do that in the way that is appropriate in this culture? And you'll notice that every time I'm sharing these ideas, I'm talking about this thing meets this need. This is the way that I invite you to explore weaving connection between the teams, between your teams, between team members, with yourself. It's kind of always asking how to meet this need. Is this need met? And using as much as possible the local resources to build connection, whatever that may be. in every part of the world, every community has resources, has ways of building connection, has ways of building community. In Myanmar, when we do this work, they have beautiful songs, dances, and festivals that bring people together, that make community, that make togetherness. And so it's difficult. I know that what I'm suggesting is challenging, because if we're working hard trying to meet urgent needs of a community in a humanitarian situation, then maybe all of these things can seem like they're a bit extra. But actually, they're fundamental. And there's so many resources that you can draw on from where you are, because the place that you're in will have these tools in the local culture, in the local community. And so whatever the level of urgency and stress, I invite you to try to explore integrating one or two of these ideas within the way that you're working with your colleagues and your teams, especially when we're in crisis. It's so tempting when we're in crisis to go, right, focus on getting the job done. But this is the moment that we need each other. This is the moment that we really need to be heard. This is the moment we really need to see and be seen. I'm continuing to work with colleagues and with INGOs in Myanmar. And as you probably know, since last February, there has been a military coup. And now there is a nationwide civil war and human rights violations on a huge scale. And it's obvious how much these things are important now, even more. Staff members are working, spending 8-9 hours a day at work. We can give each other so much in that time. We can meet so many of each other's needs in those 8 hours every day. Really, by really simple acts of listening out for feelings and needs, of being aware of feelings and needs, my own and yours. And if we have some kind of power in a team to make spaces where feelings and needs can be honored, can be met really consciously, and to ask your colleagues and your team members, which of your needs are met at this moment? Is there something we can do to meet more of them? What are your feelings in your workplace? How can we address that? How can we make it better? Just to have that as a regular conversation, that as human beings, we have fundamental social and emotional needs. And whether those are met or not will have a huge impact on how we feel and how we behave. I'm going to stop there, and I've given you kind of a tiny bit of nonviolent communication, so I really welcome you to explore more. And I look forward to the next part of this process with you, where we will explore that more in conversation with each other. You're very welcome to be in touch with me if you'd like to. That's my email address there, tanyamask@gmail.com. And I will close my presentation.